It's because the more we know our role and know how we support the business and how we connect to our teams, and then how we all deliver results and how we're able to communicate that to every other person. I think in Lean, you call it line of sight. How do we connect to the success of our business? How do we connect so everyone is important in what they do? It really helps people feel anchored. And it's how we can get through change. We are anchored through the change that's happening around us because we know our purpose and we know our place. So that's a way that as leaders, we can really be proficient in helping people get through change. We'll get to some of the other points in a little bit. We need to adopt a change mindset to understand that change is emotional. It's not intellectual. So how people react to it, is emotional and not intellectual. And change may be out of our control, but how we respond to it is very much in our control. It's all around awareness, practice, and having those tools to get through it. So, if you have that real picture of where we're trying to go and what we're going to get through, it will really help being transparent, letting people know that we might not know right now, but we're going to figure it out together, if that be the case. Just transparency and sharing what you know. And then to support a people-first culture. This is really important to prevent worker burnout and those behaviors that will tell you that someone's stressed and maybe leading to burnout. So to do that, we make sure we have a way to have two-way dialogue, that we have a way of knowing how people are feeling or what they're going through, and then know how we're going to support them. And we're going to have a slide on these types of behaviors to get us a bit more honed into what are worker burnout behaviors or tips. What does that look like? So this is a case for change management and why we need it. What are our challenges? When you ask somebody, who wants that new way of doing it? Who wants that new equipment? Who wants to change? People are ready for it. But when you ask them who wants to change, not many people are ready to raise their hands. People are usually comfortable where they're at. And if they're successful doing what they're doing, even if it's the long way, even if it's the wrong way, even if it's double the work, if they're successful doing things the way they're doing it, it is so challenging to get them to change. Change happens person by person. That's why we're usually not successful when we just send something out once as a directive and say, do it. It's constant, and even positive changes are hard. Think back to changing a job. Could be exciting, but it might be hard. You don't know the same people, you don't have the same channels, you don't have the same processes all the time. People don't know who you are. Or think back to bringing a new baby home, the disruption that it causes until you get into your groove. Change is hard. Some people fear change, and we need to expect that resistance to change is inevitable. If we accept these things, these challenges, and we plan for them, we'll get through them. So if resistance to change is expected, why do people resist change? Well, usually it's for one of these three reasons. They don't understand the change, they don't feel they're able to change, or they're not willing to change. So from a structured approach to change management, we come up with ways to address each of these reasons. And if they don't understand the change, we provide communications, and we build an awareness and a desire to change through many different vehicles and channels of communicating. If they're not able to change, we provide the coaching or the training or the learning to have them able to change. And if they're not willing to change, well, that's where we get the sponsorship and the support from the organization to reinforce and to role model the importance of the successful change. We're trying to build that momentum. Today, I'm going to go through two quick models, and I pick these quick models because A, they're easy, and B, they're the most popular models for change management out there. The ADKAR model is one that is part of the ProSci approach. ProSci is a leading organization for change management. And the A, it's an acronym. The A stands for awareness, D, desire, K, knowledge, A, ability, and R, reinforcement. They're all phases of a change that we plan for. ADKAR. We're going to dig into it, and I think you're going to like it. The other one we're going to touch on, but not dig into as deeply, is an 8-step process for leading change that was derived by John Carter. He is a professor emeritus at Harvard Business School, and he came up with an 8-step process for leading change that includes 3 buckets: creating the climate for change, enabling the organization's change, and then implementing and sustaining the change. So let's take a look. If you want to create a climate for change, why do that? Well, people might say, why now? Why should we change now? Why can't we just kick the can down the road? And it happens a lot. Other priorities take precedent, things fade out. But if you really want to get people's attention, you need to create that sense of urgency. You have to tell them why it's necessary for us to engage in this change now. And you need to build a powerful coalition of people who will get on board to support the momentum. And then you need to create a vision, visualize it. Such a big part of Lean, visualize where we're going. Have people understand what it is we're trying to achieve. Paint that picture, tell that story. This is how you create a climate for change. Don't jump to anything else before we do this piece. How do we enable the organization to change? Well, we communicate that vision. We already painted the picture, so we find many ways in which we could create that roadmap. We let people start getting involved, empower them to get into the steps that are going to lead to this change. And we create reasons to celebrate along the change. We don't wait until we absolutely get there to pop the cork and say, we did great, but we have different milestones within our change process that will help us let people know, hey, we've gotten this far, we're gonna get there. We don't have to get to our destination. I always think of the kids in the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Like, can we break it down so that, yeah, we'll be there in a little bit. Let's celebrate it. Let's go on to the next part. So create those quick wins. And then finally, when we're getting people on board, we build the change. We build the change by continuing to sponsor it, by having deliberate activities, by celebrating those milestones, by having communications so that people know what we've achieved so far. And then when we make it stick, we don't talk about the way we used to do things. This is our new normal. We throw away the old processes and we go with the new processes. It's what we do. It's no longer a change initiative. So one thing about change, managing change, is it should have a start and it should have an end. It's one thing that we don't do very well. We call something a project, but it doesn't have a start and it doesn't have an end. It just keeps lingering on. And that's why it's really important to have these milestones where we can celebrate and measure and see where we need to adjust. Any questions or thoughts so far on the 8-step process or anything else?
Yeah, just thinking through some of the change management opportunities, exercises I've gone through. A lot of the times, focusing on getting those small wins early, right? Versus and just starting something, is always like a common thing. Get some small wins first and then start building. So I guess, and I'm looking at this is higher up on the list, and I get that, you have to, know what you're doing and have that focus before the small wins. But what's your experience around, kind of that overlap, between the steps leading up to the small wins?
I think,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of times we just don't take the time for planning. I mean, in the building trade, we have to do so much project planning before we can get going. And it really takes a lot of thought. When you do project management in an organizational sense, not in a building sense, you have a project manager who goes and builds a really intricate project plan. And we don't always focus on the people. We jump in, we don't do that, creating a climate for change and really building the plans. We kind of jump in and try to do some low-hanging fruit, and then we think people are just gonna come on board. But those small wins don't always get people on board. There's some greasing of the wheels, before we even get going to the small wins.
Yeah, I think another thing around the small wins, sometimes, when particularly you're trying to sell things to leadership, it's you're trying to prove a little of it out at the same time too. So it's like trying to balance all that while not going too far ahead without the earlier.
I think just to Eric's point, Lisa, I think it's really something that's really important during the beginning of a change process is don't forget to celebrate or underestimate the value of your first followers, right? The first people who get on board are really going to drive the activity for the rest of them. So the person who came up with the plan and said, okay, this is my change project, I'm going to do it, they're going to get all the glory at the end of the day when the transition works. But the key is to understand and value your first follower. And if you can find your first follower and then foster that guy and keep him engaged, more people will come to it, and then you build momentum, right? And then you'll get, you have 2, and then you'll 3, and then and all it takes is a couple successes and recognition to your first followers, and then you can develop momentum. And then once you get that momentum going, then you'll get a change movement to get everyone on board. But it's really making sure your people are involved in the process, and you celebrate your first followers and the people who buy in, and work with the people who want to change, work with the people who want to buy in, and run with them and let them help you.
That's so right. That is to build your powerful coalition. Each one of these steps has a lot of planning that goes into it. And each one of these steps has communications and different ways of communicating going into it, whether it be, email, town hall meetings, starting to introduce new vocabulary, all different types of creative ways to get each of these 8 steps moving. So building a powerful coalition is one of them. So how do you do it? I mean, you have to look at everyone who's a stakeholder, everyone who's impacted by the change. And, you have to think about what's in it for them and why might they be happy about it and resist and get right on board, or where are they on that resistance level, or are they going to be very resistant, and how are we going to really touch those people versus those people will be right on board? And how can we take advantage of both of those attitudes to get everyone going in the same direction? And we'll get to that. It's really, really good point. But we have to leverage the people who are on board. Yep. And there are also some people, I've been on change projects with teams who really focus on the people who they know are going to be against it, and all their energy goes towards, the resistors. And sometimes I think if you took and harness that energy and you put it towards the people who are for it and not resisting as much, you might just through example set that momentum so the other people are like the sore thumbs, and they don't want to be there anymore. So you really have to take a look at who's being impacted by the change and see, do a stakeholder assessment. We'll talk about that. Anything else? So I went over the 2 models for change. We're going to dig into ADKAR a little more because that's really one that you can put in your back pocket and use for a lot of flexible ways. But first, before we get into any type of change project, we really need to make sure we have alignment. So what do we mean by alignment? See if this resonates with you. This picture of a swinging ladder from a tree is how the leader explained what he wanted. This is how the project manager understood it. This is how the team designed it. This is how it was supported, maybe through IT or the support team. But this is what the organization really wanted. Resonate with anyone who's worked on a project? This is why alignment up front is so important. What does alignment look like? We all know what are the problems we're trying to solve. What are the changes we're trying to make? Why are we making them? Who and what's going to be affected and how? How are we going to execute the change? Do we have a budget? Do we have a strategy? What is our scope? What is our timeline? And what are our desired outcomes? How do we know when we're successful? And that comes with measures as well. How do we get to alignment? We have something that we use called a shared strategy. Not a shared strategy. I can't think of it. It's a shared outlook. And we create it together, a shared understanding. We create it together. So we have people on the project team. This project is going to have these things that are going to change the way we work or the way we interact or the way we do any type of functions. And we go through that shared understanding, not just the change manager, but the core group of people who are involved in that project. And together, we come up with, on this template, very simple, answering all of these questions. And by the time we're done doing that together as a team, we have alignment. It's called a shared understanding. And that's one of the things we really want to start with. So let's get into managing change. We have alignment.
Hey, sorry, Lisa, I was just going to comment. It's Paul.
Yep.
I was just going to comment that because I'm thinking about some of the big examples you mentioned at the beginning, right, that we're all dealing with: the pandemic, the vaccination, vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, climate change, all this kind of stuff. And I think, you know, in an organization, hopefully you can all be on the same page, right, from the top down or whatever, in terms of where you're trying to go and what you want. But I think maybe you just hit on the piece of like, we can try to do a lot of change management. You see people doing that, but I think one of the big problems up front, now that you said that, is the alignment. People aren't all aligned in terms of everybody wanting the same thing or even agreeing that this is a good thing, you know, that kind of thing. Hopefully within our projects and our organizations, we can get more alignment, and then you can kind of move forward from there, right? But
yeah.
Just a thought or a comment.
Yeah, when you don't have alignment, you know, not only are the people on the project confused, but the people in the organization are confused. And, you know, even with vaccinations, maybe your company has a stance that they want everyone vaccinated, but they're not going to mandate it. Well, that's it. Just be clear with that. Be clear with what you know. Also be clear with what you don't know. And if it's going to evolve, just be clear that, you know, this is something that will evolve and I'll let you know. But you're right. I mean, it is a time of polarization, and you have to figure out what is our shared understanding, what is our communication platform going to be, what are our key messages, and if there's something ambiguous, how are we going to communicate that? If we don't have a yes or a no, how are we going to communicate to our people that we don't have a yes or a no? We have to figure it out. But we're right in that. We are right smack in that. When we're able to manage change, we increase the likelihood of the success of our project. We have higher adoption rates. And the key is we minimize the disruptions to productivity and frustration to our people, and we increase our employee confidence in future changes. The last one, increase employee confidence in future changes, is really important. Think of how many times your organization has introduced something and then people just didn't go along with it, or it didn't work, or, okay, I'll give you an example with vaccinations. We had many different surveys that went out asking people to put their vaccination status in. First survey didn't work. Second link worked, but didn't work if you pick a certain number and a certain answer and wanted to upload your verification. The third one was with a company we thought we were going to use, but they couldn't do everything we needed or adjust it. And the fourth one was a charm. So when you think about it, every time we put out a new link and a new request asking people, we got less and less responses because people thought, it's not going to work. It's not important. So every time you fail to follow through, people get more cynical about the change and future changes. So it's really important that we think it through, adjust as we need to, keep people in mind, and just keep going through the change process.
I guess, Lisa, when you're saying adapt, it's, I don't know about you, but I'm the world's biggest creature of habit, right? I mean, I have a routine, I follow the same things, I do the same sequence. And when you're doing change, you're asking someone to change their habit or create a new habit, right? So you have to understand what the habit is that you have and then how you get them to change it. And, you know, if you can just get them to do it once and then go back and get them to do it twice and to get them to do it again, then it becomes repetitive and you become, you know, it becomes a new habit and your brain sees it that way. I guess the worst analogy I could give you, because I've never been able to do this, but anyone ever got on a diet? You can change your eating habits and it'll work and you start to lose weight and then it's going really well, but you know, then you tend to plateau and then usually sometimes it falls off and you go back to your old habits because you haven't created that habit in your brain to get past the curve of where you need to go and push it. So you know, there's lots of studies that say if you can just create a habit and do it like for a certain length of time, that it becomes second nature and do that. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, right? Is to change habits and create new ones so that they kind of forget the old and create the new habit that we're trying to create.
Can
I touch on that for a sec?
Sure.
I also find that making it personal, as you said earlier, changes individual, connecting with the individual and working with them with the way they will create change, because we're not all the same. And so if you just have a blanket way of getting it out, you're not going to target your best audience. So you need to cater it. You know, I'm not suggesting, you know, every single person, but definitely for the different change styles. And then that breeds a lot more success as well.
Very good. Yeah. We're going to go through a personal change curve, how people typically adapt to change, and we can talk more about that too. But one thing to note is that when you have change in a corporate setting, you know, the company has to do something, whether it's a mandate, whether it's outdated technology that needs to be updated. It's not always going to make people happy. And we have to be really honest about that, because when we try to put rose-colored glasses on it, people can see right through it. Sometimes we just need to change because we need to change, and we need to provide the support to help people get through it in the least frustrating, most successful way we can. That's what it comes down to. And I'll tell you, as a change manager, knowing that I don't have to make people happy has been the greatest gift to me, because there have been times where I've had to do organizational merge and acquisitions that sometimes, you know, in my consulting world, sometimes meant they had to right size their organization, and you have to write the plans for that. There's nothing more hurtful, and no one's going to be happy about that. Changes in teams, changes in alignment to who they report to. You can't guarantee happiness, but what you can do is try to plan out the change so that people are aware of what's going to happen, that you're amplifying the truth, that they can be prepared and supported through the change. That's what it's about. So adapt, becoming adjusted to new conditions. And just like you just said, last speaker, I don't have your name in front of me, but I can see you. Change happens one person at a time. So, you know, just remember there's different styles. There's no one way to communicate. We should be creative and, find what resonates with different types of people and go with it. I promised you that we'd get here, and we're here. What you see before you here is a graph of people's typical reaction to change. And we're going to go through it. It mirrors the stages of grief, Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. Some of you may know that. But it doesn't mean that we're robotic and everybody goes exactly this way, but this is a typical pattern. Some people may jump up and start in the middle, and then they may fall all the way back and then start progressing. Some people may go through this seamlessly. Other people may lag at dot 1 and 2 and then fly through the rest. So let's go through them. If you look over the bottom, that's the amount of time you spend, and over the top is how we transition through the change. We want to get all the way to that top dot. So when we're just finding out about the change, we may have no desire or awareness about the change, whatever, not interested. But as we start to gain awareness, we might start to learn more about it and get more curious. More and more information comes. We may start questioning the why, questioning the how, maybe even pushing back. Some people may have a lot of ownership to the status quo. They may push back more, but that's where we have to really know our stakeholders. Resisting is natural. It will happen to some degree. As we get more knowledge, more and more knowledge, and it's coming from people, different types of people in the organization, we're beginning to accept that this is going to happen. I better get with the program, or at least listen a little more closely. And then as we're going through the change, we're trying to gain the ability to adapt to the change. We're trying to learn more about it, where we are within this change, and what we need to do to be successful. We start training, we start being coached, we start having those point people that we can go to ask if we're doing things right or if we have questions. We're building our proficiency and our ability to practice the new skill. And then as we're doing that, we're getting positive reinforcement and recognition through the organization. And that's how we stay there. We sustain that change. So that's how people typically react to change. Let me see here. Okay. So how do we know if we are having too much change, or if the change is not planned well enough or unplanned? Well, there are different things that we should recognize. The level of resistance, or maybe burning someone out. They have too much on their plate, you're asking too much of them. By the way, we never did it like this before. I don't know what to do, no one's helping me through, whatever it may be. What does that look like? Well, here's some things that should raise that red flag for you. If productivity isn't what it usually is, if quality is lagging, if people are not engaged, they're coming in late, or they're not coming in at all, you're seeing negative attitudes and hearsay, and even someone's health is being impacted. Resistance is very likely if people are refusing to change, if they're backsliding on progress, if they won't let go of the new ways of doing things. So we have a new way of doing reports. People are using the new way, but they're still doing that old Excel clunky spreadsheet as well. Well, we want to get better. We can't hold on to the old and the new. So how do they get that confidence to do things the new way and let go of the old? So that's where resistance comes in. You may hear excuses. People may have all types of reasons why they don't need to do the new way now or the changed way now. They may be avoiding it. They may even be malicious about it. I'll do it. You're asking to do it, but I'm telling you right now, it's not going to do X, Y, Z, or even going rogue and creating, some resistance that really infects other people. Those are signs that you need to go back and take a look at what we're asking people to do and how we asked it. Anything resonate here? Okay, so we talked about the ADKAR model, and this is where it comes really useful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, for each ADKAR, I'm going to ask some questions that you should be asking yourself when you are planning for a change. So on the left side, I'm going to ask some questions that are in awareness. What could we do to get people to be more aware? What kind of things should we ask ourselves? And then on the right side, those are the things that we should be able to do to put into our change plan. So let's go. Okay, for awareness, you should find ways to answer these questions. Why change now? Why do we have to do it? What's wrong with the way we're doing things right now? And what's going to happen if we don't change, if we don't do whatever it is? Those are what you need to answer when you're trying to get people aware. And how you do that is you involve all of your stakeholders. Stakeholders are anyone who is impacted by the change or anything. So you may have a change that impacts some process. Who are the people who run that process? They're a stakeholder as well. So involve all of your stakeholders and make them aware. Implement an ongoing process on how you're going to keep people aware, and create communication channels where you can get feedback. So it's not all coming from you, because you could be going way down a road in the wrong direction because you haven't gotten input. So create those ways to have input. This is how you create your plan for awareness. Desire. Desire is the hardest one. It's the one we usually skip over, and it comes back to kick us in the butt. So what is desire? Desire is answering or addressing the what's in it for me. And remember, you might have all those stakeholders, you have a lot of different me's. So answer that. What's in it for me? What are the benefits for me and for the company? And why should I get on board? These are the things that you can do to build desire. Communicate those reasons. Communicate what's in it for you. If you know of people who are going to get on board, bring them in the fold. Let them be the people who speak for this project. Get your elevator speech. Share it with them. Have them go and help. Have them be champions. Have them be coaches. Use them. And then give previews of what this new way of doing things is going to be like. Remember, we said visualize, tell that story, visualize the future. Desire, the really most challenging one to do and the easiest one to skip. I'll give you an, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Paul again. And sorry, I'm jumping back up to the awareness. Just something struck me as you were going through that. The second bullet that says what's wrong with the way we are doing things today. I just wondered if you have any thoughts about the word wrong, because I know, for instance, when we were rolling out our lean program, and Eric Lucis, I worked with Eric previously, and I know it was his kind of coaching, I think, that said from his experience, he said, you know, we don't present this as, hey, you guys have been doing things the wrong way, and here we've got the right way, you know. Because, as you said, people have been very successful for a very long time doing things the way they are doing them. And this is, you know, often more about a better way, an improved way. Maybe there's a new technology that can help, but it's not about wrong, because we definitely don't want to make people feel like we're judging them that you're doing something wrong or you've been doing this the wrong way, right?
No,
so I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
No, I think it would be a good thing to reword it, because we don't want to blame people, right? We never want to find fault in people. We want to find fault in process. You know, people don't inherently go out and want to do something wrong. So it's noted, and I think it could be changed. So, but I think people, you know, might ask, you know, why can't we keep doing things the way we're doing them today? So noted. Yeah, I think that's a very good improvement. Thank you.
I think on the awareness stage, really what we're trying to do, though, is we're just trying to create a baseline so that from all the stakeholders and everyone included has the same understanding of what your current state is. right?
Yep.
I've done a lot of process mapping in my life, and I've gone through, and it's amazing that you can say, have a conversation with one level of management and say, how do we do that? And they'll give you, a swim lane diagram that says it does it this way. And then you go to the next level down and they say, well, we do it that way, but we don't do this, or we don't do that, and we don't do this. And then you go to the guys that are actually doing the work, and it's nowhere close to what the people at the top were. So I think the awareness is just making sure we have a true baseline of understanding exactly how the work's really getting done today. And then the good thing about that is that gives you the opportunity to start to build trust and, letting the people that are going to be involved in the change have an opinion. So then they get on side a lot more better. If you include them in the process of change, then you get a lot more support and buy-in when you actually implement it because they were part of the process. So I think sorry, Lisa, that's my 2 cents on awareness.
No, they're all great comments. And I think also, this is about letting people be aware of the change. And the other thing is, letting them know that we know it's going to be difficult. When we had the SAP upgrade at Turner, that was difficult for so many people. And letting them know that, we know this is going to be a difficult habit and a difficult, process to learn, but we're here with you and we're going to support you. Why hide it? Why hide it until they get into training? Let people know ahead of time. Let them, know what to expect. It at least makes it makes you look like you expected it and that you're well planned in supporting people. So knowledge is about the change. Again, this is all about the change. So let people know the skills they'll need to be successful and how they're going to get those skills.
Lisa, Linda has her hand up. Linda has her hand up to ask a question.
Hi, this has got me thinking about so many things. I've got a question around desire. When you say create your ambassadors, what kind of, for lack of a better word, like characteristics or qualifications do you look for when you're creating these ambassadors?
So first of all, you want people who are influential role models, and that could be, it doesn't mean rank. It means it could be, somebody who really knows their business well, an admin who really knows their group and is going to role model and be a support for this endeavor. Bring them in. I'm sure in your organizations you have champions. They'll I don't know, what are we doing right now? We're doing a new process for construction items list, and they put something together and a new tool, and so they made their ambassadors or their champions who are going to help each of the region with the tool. Silly little type of example, but with every time you have a change and you want to have these ambassadors, you can call them whatever you want. You may have specific attributes that you want to align to them. It may be that they need to be comfortable with technology if it's a technology change. It may be that they're open to behavior change. It may be that they're willing to engage and have conversations, so they're a very good conversationalist. But most of all, it's somebody who will support the change and be visible about it. Does that help?
I think it's also really important to include somebody or the people that actually do that work currently.
Right. I guess for some empathy, if you will, or some sympathy around what people go through when they're, asked to make these, like you said, habitual changes. Habits take a while to get on board.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a transitional period. We're going through something like that right now in our company. Where we have adapting the uptake of some new technology, and you were going through this whole thing. So this is really interesting. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I heard today that it takes 21 days of repeated information and trying to get something to be a habit. They seem to change the number all the time, but 21 days. So some people will have like 21-day spans before they will introduce a new idea or or something like that. So you move into a new space and you have to learn how to use reservation software. So for 21 days, we're just going to keep pounding on those messages around, how we're going to engage in that tool and in using our space. And then the next 21 days, it's going to be about using the flexible quiet cars, because we never had quiet cars at work before. So how do we get people to actually get up out of their desk and use it more for the appropriate type of work? So they do that for 21 days. I think Gensler told me they were doing this. So it's interesting how, people will come up with change plans that really support helping people understand the new ground rules and develop new habits. Okay, so knowledge, different than ability. Knowledge is the knowledge. How will people get the knowledge they need about this change and how we're going to help them through the change? When I say ability, think training, think practical application. So once I have the knowledge, will I be able to act upon it? Will I have time and a safe place to practice? Like what you just said, like we're going through this technology. What happens if I make a mistake and I submit a report wrong? Am I going to get dinged? Or will someone look over it for the first 5 days and, give me some feedback of what I did wrong? So how are we going to help people feel safe practicing? And what do I do when I have questions or problems? Is there a point person? Is there a help desk? What do I do? Those are things that we can ask ourselves as we're creating a change plan. So what are some of the things we can put in place? We can kick off the implementation, right? We can start kicking off how we're going to train, how we're going to onboard, where we're going to have a site where people can go to 24/7 for self-help, provide that help network, and also analyze the progress. Do we need to have touch points? Do we need to all of a sudden come in after the first month? You know what? Let's have some drop-in times for people to understand how to do X, Y, Z. Let's reach out to all of the supers on the sites and then, on the sites in this area so that we could, make sure that they're getting that, touch that they need to do things the new way. So ability, think about that. I want to ask you guys something about desire. How many times have you gone into a training class, no information about the training other than the logistics? This is where it is. This is where to show up. This is what to bring. This is how much time it'll take. You get into the class or the virtual class, whatever it may be, and you're told the new way of doing something. They didn't build the awareness, they didn't build the desire, they didn't do the knowledge. You just go right into training and they think that they can do all the rest of it right there in that room within giving you the instructional training. And this is where I think we really fail on that desire part. I think if we did a really good due diligence on the rest of it before we get people into the training, we would have so much of a better success rate. People would be in the right mindset. They wouldn't be wasting the first X number amount of minutes or hours in training trying to figure out what's expected of them. So let's, walk away with really trying to figure out how can we prepare people for change? How can we prepare people for success? And then reinforcement, get back here, where are we? Reinforcement, usually, so you go into that training class, right? You didn't have any of the A, D, or K. You go in, you leave, you don't get any of the R. You're done. And the people who trained you, click it off. Everyone knows what to do now. It's done. Let's just do business as usual. And we all know what happens then, right? So reinforcement. What happens when we're successful? Is there a reward? Will there be smaller rewards along the way to encourage us? We already spoke about that, right? Those chunking it out to have those small way to goes. Provide continuous support, announce features or changes or updates to whatever it is you just went through. Recognize people for the effort they went through. and celebrate successes. This is how we reinforce. I know that sometimes people will say, we have been talking about COVID for the last 3 years. We're not talking about it in the same way anymore. You know, where this is what we've tried to go through as an organization. You know, this is what we're going to do going forward. We have been successful. We have let people work in any way they needed to work. We have let people work from home if they needed to, take care of their family and their priorities. Now this is the way we're going to shift. Like, there are evolving ways as well to reinforce people, and then there is the real, okay, we've done it. You know, let's recognize that we've done it. Let's move on, but let's not abandon it. Let's keep providing the support when people need it. What happens when a new person comes in? You know, what happens if we start backsliding? You know, how are we going to do that? What happens when we plateau? So these are some of the things in reinforcement that we should plan for. This slide we spent a lot of time on, but I really think it will help you if you're going to go through those steps of planning, the things that you ask yourself, the things you can answer, aka plan for, will help really support the changes that you're dealing with.
Hey, Lisa, you've got a question in chat.
Yeah.
Laura, do you want to ask a question?
Sorry, I have an occasionally noisy site. The question was, how long should you wait between implementing a change and then when you alter it based off of feedback from people actually implementing it?
I think that depends on how dire it is to you know, if it's broken and you have to change it, then change it. I would say that, you know, letting people, being transparent about that we're going to keep giving your feedback may lead to some tweaks and changes going into it. If people know that, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that's, a lot of times that's expected. So I don't know if I can give you the amount of time, but you know, if it's urgent, then you know, use your communication channels and let people know that, and then try to figure out what is the plan that we need to do to help people shift. And just be transparent and, you know, try to be as least confusing as possible through that transparency. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I'm concerned sometimes when you implement change and then you make alterations because you get feedback, people think you didn't have a good plan in the first place. And
yeah.
So, but your feedback's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, but you know what's too, sometimes you get feedback, and because you don't get to, depending who that feedback's from, you don't get to defend why, you know, that might be a phase 2. Sometimes we do that. We'll take all the feedback and then say, we'll consider that for a phase 2. And letting people know that too, that, you know, this is our initial rollout. There will be changes and there will be a phase 2. If something doesn't work, if we find that something isn't working and needs an immediate change, we'll let you know. But, you know, sometimes we do collect things, and if it's just a continuous improvement, we'll do a phase 2 and then implement all those continuous improvements. So why ADKAR? We just went through all those things that you could do to make a plan for change management using ADKAR, but it's really easy to remember. You could take each ADKAR, treat them as a phase, and see if you're ready to go on to the next phase. You can even have measures for each one of those phases. So it's just easy to use. And again, it aligns to that human response to the typical way we go through change. So that's why I like to use it. I just think it's a really simple and practical model. And I'm going back to that change model just to show you how it fits in. So when we are going through the very beginning of change, people may not have awareness or desire. They may be gaining that awareness, and they may be questioning the change or doing a little bit of resistance that we expect. This is when you use your communication plan. You develop that communication for the purpose of the change You have all the different ways that you're trying to build the desire to know more about the change, and you try to visualize the outcomes of the change. This is where you do it. When people are getting more and more information about the change and they're starting to learn about how they're going to be able to adjust to the change, how they're going to be trained, that's when you build all your coalition of supporters and influencers. That's when you're going to identify your champions. When you're getting into the training, you have your coaches, your training, your learning plans, and ways that people are going to practice their new skills. And when we're doing the new ways of doing things, when we're actually implementing it, you reinforce the change through acknowledgement. You acknowledge people who are adopting these new skills and behaviors, and you have ways to recognize them and celebrate success. That's how the ADKAR model fits in with the way we respond to change. Again, you might not be 100% in D. You might be 70% in D. 10% are still in the, in the A, and you may have some people who are like, woof, right into the training, they're getting those skills. So you have your plan and you know where you need to reinforce. Move this back here and go to the next slide. So we talked about, how do we know when people are stressing out? What are some behaviors that will raise some red flags? Well, on the flip side, how can we help people cope with change in the workplace? One of the ways is, remember we said really know your job and know that line of sight, know your job, know how you fit in the organization, how you deliver success, really help ground people in a world of change. Let them know that this is the purpose and this is what we're doing and it makes sense to be doing it and you're adding a lot of value to the organization. Well, you lead by and you behave by example. You act as a coach or a mentor, which is a huge part of lean behavior. You suggest and support realistic goals. We're going through steps, we're chunking out the change, we're having realistic goals, we're giving good feedback to people, supporting good habits. And another way is to manipulate your environment so that you get those desired behaviors that you want. They're easier to perform. So an example of this is, if you don't want people smoking outside the door of your building, then, build a nice covered walkway with a bench, a vending machine, cigarette ashtray, where they can dispose of their cigarette butts, and people will congregate there. Build an environment that will make those behaviors easier to perform. I live in a community that has this huge shared park in the middle, and everyone has a dog. And I can't tell you how annoying it was to walk there, and there was dog mess all over the place. So they implemented every few hundred yards a place where there's a plastic bag and a repository. You will never step in any of that anymore. They made it simple for people to behave in the desired fashion. So try to design and manipulate your environment so that it's easy for people to perform in the way you want them to. And again, develop those support networks that we talked about before. All different ranks, all different roles, someone new to the organization, somebody very influential and who has been in the organization a long time. Create the places where people can see the new ways of doing things, where they can ask for support, and where they can, get some positive reinforcement. At Turner, we have the Turner Knowledge Network, and on that site, we have the organizational change management pages, and we have the template that I shared with you about the shared understanding, to understand the what, why, and how, to create that common story, that elevator speech, your scope for the project, to do that as a group so that you get that alignment. We have a stakeholder assessment, and you can pull these down off the internet too. You can pull down all of these tools. And that's where we're having a change. We want to understand everyone who's involved, being touched by that change, how they're being impacted by that change. And if you know those people or those groups of people, Where are they on the acceptance to resistance continuum? Okay, that will help you really focus your communications to the what's in it for me. That will help you address all of those concerns in your communications. And then finally, a business impact analysis. What other areas are being impacted by this change? If you're changing, information, a database, are there other reports in the organization that draw from that database that may be impacted? If you're asking a certain role within your organization to do a certain function monthly, is it impeding them from doing something else around that same time? Is it busy season? Is there a moratorium on communications during that time because it's the time everyone goes for training? I don't know. Those are the things that we try to figure out so that we successfully communicate, and we place the timing of the change when we can. We place it in a way that it will be most easily adopted. So those are some of the tools that if you're in Turner, you can get them on the Turner site. If you're not, you can get any of the change management assessment tools, pretty vanilla on the internet. What I'd like to do now is share some mental models or some tools that we use just to assess the change, if you will. So the first one is, how darn big is this change and how many people do I need dedicated to support it? So these are some questions that you can ask yourself to know how intricate of a change plan and a team do I need for this change to be successful. So some of the things you can ask yourself is, who's going to be impacted? Don't forget, not just the target audience, but all those other upstream, downstream, cross-functional things that might be impacted. How disruptive will it be to the end user's day-to-day processes? What's the business risk if we don't do it? If it doesn't stick, what's the business risk? What's the risk if the end users are resistant? How much learning is going to be required? And how much time do we have to get this done? Of course, if you have the least time, the more people you need on it, right? So these are some of the things that, will help you understand, do I need a dedicated change manager on this change to make sure it's successful? More complicated it is, the more things that seem complicated, the more you'll need, more time or attention you'll need on it. Another quick tool, and you guys with Lean, this is going to be a cinch because you're so good at A3 thinking, just a real gap assessment of the overall change. How are we doing things now? How will we do it in the future? And what's changing? And if that change seems like it's big, well, you're gonna need some change management. What needs to be in place to support the change, and what do you do if it plateaus or stalls? These are some ways to just, bring it to management. Look at this, take a look at it. Just, you don't need a huge spreadsheet, just take a look at it and you'll see we need someone to manage this or not. So quick tool number 2. How do we know if our people are ready for change? Well, this passion meter is something that we have used here. It was done by an MIT, it was published in the MIT Sloan Management Review. As you can see below, I have it given credit to who made it here. The passion meter is when you get together with some of your employees and you talk about the change, and you could really tell, where are they from sponsor to negative skeptics? You see that little, green to red? Where are they? Where do they fall on that continuum? And it really helps the people who are managing the change understand, how ready are we in this organization for this? And how much change management will we need? So, and it will also help us figure out, are we ready to take this on? Do we need to slow down, or do we need to take a step back and stop? Are we ready for this? That's what it's about, change readiness. Sometimes we jump into things and we don't take the time to really assess our environment. Okay, and tool number 4. This is something that's really helpful when you're looking at all those different stakeholders. So I think I have 2 scenarios here. One is the company's introducing a mass communication tool that will allow selected people within the company to send emergency notifications to turn or staff on their work phone. So if we were going to do this, who would be our stakeholders? Well, we'd need super users, our employees, our executive leadership, and our trade principals and partners. Those are all the people that we need to think about in this change. So then we ask ourselves, okay, well, how ready are they and how big is that change going to be for them? One exercise we use is called the start, stop, and continue. What are some of the behaviors and skills that they need to start using? What are the ones they need to stop using? And what are the ones that they already had that they will continue using? When you take a look at this, it gives you an idea of how complex the change is going to be. So that's another quick change assessment tool. I'll share this deck with Joe to share with you. Has anybody ever done a start, stop, continue? I will tell you it's good in your personal life as well. It works. It's a good conversation to have. This is how we used it with Last Planner System. Chunking out our different roles within the company. And if we were to implement Last Planner System completely, what is it? We would have to start, stop, and continue. Okay, and then I thought I would take the final one and just use an example I think that would resonate with all of us right now, and that's an ADKAR journey to respond to COVID-19. So if we look at our first ring in responding to COVID-19, we see first thing we want to do is communicate self-isolation if you think you're sick or you are positive, social distancing, and washing your hands and general hygiene. That's the first response we had to COVID. Each one of these had an ADKAR to it. How do we make people aware? How do we build the desire? How do we give them the knowledge? How do we give them the ability? And how do we reinforce that behavior? Each one of those things required us to think out ADKAR so that we can have our communication and change plan in place. If we look at the second ring, how does the organization respond to COVID-19? Well, we have COVID protocols that we put out. We need people to adhere to them. We need to help people excel as virtual employees. We need to have people know how to work within virtual teams or manage virtual employees. We need to have a rapid resource redeployment for those sites or offices that may have a lack of resources due to infection or isolation. And then we need to recognize the sacrifice that people have made and the nimbleness that we have been during this time as an organization. Again, every one of these has an ADKAR. And then ring 3 is the organizational specific changes to shape into our new future. So I'll give you an example of that. We're moving. After 30 years of being headquartered in downtown Manhattan, we're going to Hudson Yards next year. And we have to design that space, having people feel safe around ring 1, yet we don't know where we'll be yet as a population in our attitudes towards COVID. So what will be those organizational specific changes that are going to shape our new life in this new space? and we're still figuring that out. Oop, I thought I had the ADKAR. Does that make sense to you guys, that how you can put ADKAR to make sure that you're addressing each of these things?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay, so here's some in-depth questions using ADKAR. We're going to use the model, and we're going to talk about social distancing. Okay, so we took this first ring, social distancing, number 2, and we're going to ask some questions. So awareness, what's social distancing? Why do I need to practice it? Why do I need to practice it now? And what will happen if I don't? Those are some of the things that we want to get across in our communications and in our role modeling. And desire, what's in it for me? What's in social distancing for me? What are the personal motivators to social distance? And what are the communal motivators? And how do I overcome it if I don't want to do it? What are some things I can do? Knowledge would be, what do I need to know to start doing it? What do I need to know to continue doing it? What is some misinformation that we need to unlearn, right? There's a lot of that going around. And where do I go for accurate information? Where are my sources that we're all going to be on the same page in this organization? So I'm behaving in the way that's expected of me. For ability, what specific behavioral changes do I need to demonstrate? What are some potential various knowledge and ability gaps? What barriers might exist that prevent me from social distancing? So I know we have that in the construction scenarios. So, you know, what are some barriers and what do I do? And where do I go for coaching to get better? And reinforcement, or what are the mechanisms that we're planning to put in place to make sure that this sticks? How do we know if we're successful? What are our measurements? What are some steps we can take to increase this behavior's likelihood to sustain? And how do we celebrate the success of our people really respecting the social distancing guidelines that we're putting out? So those are some questions we can ask ourselves to get our plan together. How many of you are going to dream ADKAR tonight? Okay, at the top of the presentation, I promised I'd ask, what was your nugget? And I'm curious to know it, so please spit it out.
I can start. Lisa, great presentation. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. I'm trying to turn this down. You know, I like the reminder that understanding that change is an emotional response, right? And just remembering that everybody's going to approach this in a very visceral manner, and, you know, just to remind ourselves, I guess, to be more aware of that and to be approaching it with always that in mind. So I just appreciated that reminder. Thanks.
Thank you.
I like the alignment and the whole discussion around the alignment, as and I think Paul said it, it's very key on a project, and I agree with that. It's a challenge, but it's something, I think there's some good tools that you gave us here.
Good, thank you.
Really like the start, stop, continue analysis. Thought that was an excellent way to kind of really frame how, what are the concrete steps that I need each of the stakeholders to take. Something I'll definitely be trying in the future.
You know what I love about that? We always think about things to add on, but we don't think often about things to subtract, right? We can make things simpler that, you know, these are the things that you don't have to do anymore, you know? So yeah, stop, start, continue. Thank you.
One of the things that I took away was right near the beginning, was that obviously, you know, our intent with a lot of this is to plan for a specific successful change and adoption. But in doing that, recognizing and being more intentional with individuals, with people, to recognize that people have a lot of change going on in their life. We all do. Like you said, there's the pandemic, there's, politics and climate change. Like, people have lots of concerns. Maybe they've got a family member they're trying to take care of, whatever. So much stuff is happening to people. They're dealing with new technology and all these things. And that even is going to be different for different people. So you're trying to throw a change, it may be into the mix that you want to move forward. But it's probably also important just to have that dialogue, I think you said, with people, and maybe ask and see, how are people coping? What else are they coping with? And what's their stress level and that kind of thing? And taking that kind of more human approach and making sure you really have a connection with individuals, so you understand maybe where they're at and what their capacity is even to take on another change. So that's something I thought about from right near the beginning when you were talking about that, connecting with people and being more deliberate about having some dialogue and that.
Yeah.
My nugget comes from the beginning too, actually. And you made the comment, so I'll back up. My daughter growing up, telling her that she can't deal, or she can't control the way that people are going to behave. She can only control the way that she reacts to their behavior. And I never made the correlation to running your business that way. And you can't control the chaos that's around you, but you can only control your systems based on that chaos. Right. And so my nugget was making that connection, and, just a different way of looking at applying that mentality to the business. Because you really need your systems to support you, right? So that was cool. Thanks.
Great. Love your nuggets.
Okay, I'll give you mine. It was a fairly simple one, but I think that creating that vision of where you want to go. I think I've delivered change, and you forget to tell the audience where you're going. You get bogged down in just delivering it, and then I've been on the receiving end, and you feel like you're just kicking the ball up and down the field without any kind of understanding of why. So that kind of helps with that alignment, really.
Yeah, so true.
Along with what Alistair said, most changes will have benefits or a positive outcome. So if we can have the recipients understand the desire or what the benefits will be at the end, they're more likely to be on board. So having that knowledge and the desire will help get us there.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I heard the other day that ties in is even just to understand the audience really, really well, because then the change in, or you might require a change in terms, essentially. So we were told that for teachers, if you tell them something right now that is an opportunity for them, all they hear is it's more work. It's just they just go immediately there. So even just really understanding who you're trying to speak to and be very targeted, I think, because your verbiage may have to change.
Yeah. You have to know what matters to them, and they may be so busy. You better give me a compelling reason why I need to.
Yeah. And they might have different triggers, right? That really you aren't aware of. So it takes a little bit of homework.
And you know what? Change management too. Don't forget, if you go through the steps, you can go back to leadership and say, is this really the best time to do this? What, can we pull it back 3 months? I mean, the teachers are dealing with XYZ. Maybe by August, they won't be doing, virtual and hybrid classes. We might have better success. Sometimes, you can put a compelling reason for people to delay, depending on what it is.
Any more questions? Lisa, thanks very much for your presentation. It was awesome. It was outstanding. Thanks for taking the time to give it with us. And we really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I just want to summarize. So the key to moving people from a mindset of change resistance to change resilience. Change isn't going away. So we want them to be resilient. And we want them to know that they're supported. So remember, we were saying every time one fails, they get more cynical and resistant. So, getting your change processes in place will help people become more change resilient. And there's 4 steps. So amplify truth telling, just tell the truth, be transparent about it as much as you can, communicate often, leverage your shared meaning, that shared understanding. So everyone's talking from the same page. If you can't visualize it, you can't execute it. I know someone just said that was their nugget. If you can't visualize it, you can't execute it. Well, if I can't visualize it, I don't know where I'm going. So visualize it, and then tell and share a story. It builds excitement, and just be the role model of what it is that you want to achieve. And all of those things, listen, if you don't do it perfect, you'll do better than not doing it at all. And that itself should add some value. So thank you very much, you guys. It's late and you were so attentive and your questions were great and your nuggets were great, and I appreciate it. And go out there and you know, be change resilient.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
In the spirit of lean, before we let
you.
anyone go, I'd really like to do a plus delta. So with all the team out there, as a plus for, you know, what helped you today? Like, what did you take away from today on a positive note? Or on the delta, what can we do to adjust and improve to facilitate our presentations better the next time we do this? So all open to plus deltas.
Would you like me to drop? So.
Oh, you want
Joe,
to stop sharing? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Would you like me to drop as well?
No, you're free to do plus deltas. It's all good. Oh. Or if you want to, you can.
Well, I gave my pluses. I can't believe how attentive you guys are.
I actually got a lot of them right out of your nugget. There's a lot of pluses right there. So
there you go. Right. Okay.
Can you guys
I like that
see my
Lisa
screen?
offered some real tools that we can take away today. I appreciated that as a plus.
I really like that Lisa let us know that we were going to be looking for a nugget at the end to share.
I agree with the tools. Some great visuals. Everything is always better with visuals. And, you know, a lot of great content reinforcing, you know, what's already there, and for me anyway.
Anyone else? Pluses or deltas, things that we can do better?
I think it was a great topic and very timely, as we're in this mode of constant change and helping our teams figure out how to navigate and be resilient.
I enjoyed the opening icebreaker. I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you, David. I owe you a coffee.
I think the timing was good, considering we've got people in Toronto and Vancouver. We often miss things because they're at 7 in the morning or something. Yeah.
No deltas? Anything you think we can work on to do better the next time?
As well, I didn't realise I had to get a password to log into the webinar until I actually logged in. It's sort of, I panicked at whenever it was on the hour.
I have a plus, and then I really like the attendance that we got from a broader cross section of people. And I guess my request and the team's request for the community of practice is, if you got any value out of this or you enjoyed any of this, to share it and try and bring some back with you to the next one that we're going to have. And hopefully we can grow the numbers in our community of practice and get more and more ideas and share more experiences together going forward. With that in mind, I'm going to share with you that our next meeting will be on, I'll send you all an invitation, but it's going to be on February the 23rd, 2022, and same time frame from 4 till 6. And what we're going to do on that one is we're trying to kind of do a bit of an intro to the COP and an intro to lean. But what we want to do is build it kind of maybe in a lean coffee format, and we want to ask yourselves, the audience, and all the participants and all that, what agenda items or where do you think we should go? What topics would you like to see for us to do this year, and situations that you want to talk about that would be, important to you? We've got a few that we've got scheduled that we're probably going to do. We're going to do how lean applies to design, and you can get it done in the early stages. You don't have to wait for it actually to get to projects. We want to do some visual abandonment stuff, some 5S, 8 ways, kind of follow the life cycle of a project down through our agenda. But our next meeting is really, we want it to be an interactive, open discussion of things that you guys would be interested in learning or talking about, or what you'd like to see or understand. How do you feel about that as a topic? I think that's something that we could try and create collaborative, really build some ideas on what we want to have present for the next few months, and then we can get our agenda out there. Thoughts, comments, concerns? Or we're better to do a topic and you know exactly what you're going to come and get? No ideas? Okay. With that, I want to thank you all for your time. I really appreciate you all taking the 2 hours today to join us. I know it's late in the day, and it's hard. It's hard to find the time to do all this stuff, especially if you're working from home. How many of you guys are all working from home? And you're trying to do the virtual teaching and the virtual parenting and the virtual. All I say right now is, thank God my kids are grown up and they're not at home anymore. I don't know how the people that are trying to multitask and do all this stuff together are still alive and smiling and are on this phone call. So all the power to you. If Maria, I see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. How you're doing this, I have no idea. It's tough times that we're going through, and I just think it's nice that if we can take the time to do this and meet together and work on a common cause together. So appreciate your time. I'll give you back the rest of the little bit of time that you have in your day today, and look forward to sending you the invite and seeing you at our next call.
Thanks,
Good night,
Lisa.
everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yes, darling?
What are we having for dinner?
I don't know. Let me look and see what's downstairs in the freezer.
Okay. 6 o'clock already.
Is it just me or is that light flickering?
Yeah, it's flickered a few times.
I'm wondering if it's got one socket that's not right, because I put the 3 bulbs